just say thank you. I know there are so many new viewers who have joined us over the course of the past couple of weeks, and I wanted to say hello to you. I wanted to say welcome. We're glad to have you, regardless of which side of the aisle you're on. I know some of you are friendly to my viewpoints, and some of you are not. And everyone is welcome. I'm really happy to have you here. Make sure to subscribe to the show. YouTube.com/Liz Wheeler, X.com/Liz_Wheeler. We have video on Spotify now. You can head over there and search for the Liz Wheeler Show. Subscribing on Spotify helps other people find the show. You'll also make sure you don't miss any of our content by subscribing. Really appreciate everybody who has subscribed recently, and I'm very excited that so many new people are joining us here on the Liz Wheeler Show. You know what we do? We seek the truth, we tell the truth, and we do it with a smile. We're happy warriors here, although sometimes we get a little aggravated with the government, with politicians, but they deserve it. They deserve it. All right, a couple orders of business today to start the show. First of all, a huge thank you to President Trump. I was beyond delighted and so grateful to President Trump for listening and responding to his base. Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you for listening to our concerns about the Epstein files. When we communicated, and I know we were loud about it, when we communicated to you why the Epstein files are so important to us, why we had this visceral reaction to what we perceived as a lack of transparency. Thank you for listening to us and understanding that we associate the Epstein files with justice, and we voted for you because you promised justice. And this is a big week for President Trump and his administration, because we might actually be seeing the first glimmer of what I would call real justice, like justice for one of the big cases, justice for Russiagate. We'll get to that in a couple minutes, don't worry, because there is one caveat to that. But thank you to President Trump for listening. President Trump has given Attorney General Pam Bondi the direction to unseal grand jury documents related to Jeffrey Epstein. So Attorney General Pam Bondi should be delivering that to us here soon. I also want to thank everyone here with us today. Thank you for raising your voice. When I say President Trump listened to the base, you're the base. It was your voice. You raised it. You did this. So give yourself a pat on the back. This is one of the unique roles that we have to play in this Trump administration. Different, I think, than American citizens, a different role than American citizens have ever played in a presidential administration in history. We are there. Our voices are important. Our participation is necessary in achieving the America First agenda that we voted for President Trump to implement in office, and you did your part. So good on you. Thank you for that. So these grand jury documents, we'll of course analyze them once they're unsealed. Do I expect there to be anything, gasp, bombshell in them? I doubt it. I don't think that there's going to be anything super significant in the grand jury documents. However, in a sense, that doesn't matter, because this is a great first step. When I say President Trump listened, that also means he's going to continue listening. So we have two specific requests to follow up on the grand jury documents, two additional documents that he can produce to us ASAP. I mean, shouldn't take more than an hour or two for him to get us these documents. I'm going to tell you what those two documents are in just a second. Today's episode is sponsored by All Family Pharmacy. Medical freedom means that you get to decide what's best for your health, not the government, not Big Pharma, not Dr. Fauci, certainly not your insurance company. That's why I love All Family Pharmacy and what they're doing. They're actually changing the way that people get their medications. No insurance, no gatekeepers. I loathe gatekeepers. Instead, with All Family Pharmacy, it's just fast, affordable access to the medications that you trust shipped right to your door. Here's how it works. You go online to their website, you select the medications that you need. A licensed doctor reviews your order and then writes you a prescription for it. Your medication then ships straight to you. It really is that simple. Like, imagine the nightmare that the insurance companies and doctors and all the medical complex has put you through. It can actually be this simple. All Family Pharmacy has the essentials. We're talking ivermectin, hydroxychloroquine, all kinds of antibiotics, all kinds of other medications, over 200 different options. And yes, every order includes the prescription. If you believe in medical freedom like I do, and I know you do, this is your kind of pharmacy. Go to allfamilypharmacy.com/Liz. Use code Liz10 to save 10% off your order. That's allfamilypharmacy.com/Liz, code Liz10. allfamilypharmacy.com/Liz, code Liz10. Okay, so what's the next step in the Epstein files? The next step, 2 documents we are requesting from the Trump administration. The first is the Alex Acosta. Now, Alex Acosta was the former Department of Justice prosecutor who cut the sweetheart deal for Jeffrey Epstein back in 2007. It was Alex Acosta who had reportedly said that he was told to back off of Jeffrey Epstein because Jeffrey Epstein belonged to intelligence. That interview in which he allegedly made that comment, that would be in a Department of Justice OPR interview. And we would like that transcript released, please, Mr. President, as soon as possible. We want to know exactly what the phraseology of the question was, what Alex Acosta's response was. We want to know what the Department of Justice asked in addition to that question and what they didn't ask. That transcript should be easily accessible, and you should be able to get that to us ASAP. We appreciate your attention to the matter. We'd also like a readout of whether or not and when the CIA launched any internal traces. It's basically just a query request on whether Jeffrey Epstein had ever been tied in any way to the CIA. So the way that an internal trace or a query request works is when an individual is reported in the media to be associated with the CIA, oftentimes internally the CIA types the name into the system to see, are they actually CIA? Is this person, or is this just, media nonsense? We'd like to know whether the CIA ever ran any internal traces or query requests on Jeffrey Epstein, back 2007 or, around his death in 2018. Now, you may need some kind of technological forensics to uncover that. I don't know if it's been destroyed or hidden in any way, but the record of that should be available, and it will tell us a lot about what we need to know. If you missed last Wednesday's episode, this is my last comment on Jeffrey Epstein before we move on. If you, and I mean, move on today, not before we move on. But if you missed last Wednesday's episode with Mike Benz, there are a lot of theories about, who the heck was Jeffrey Epstein? What was he doing? What was his racket? Who was he working for? Did he have a client list? Was he involved with intel? Like, what was up with his death? Is there a big government cover up? There are a lot of theories. I don't need to tell you that. But none of the theories answer most of the questions. Every theory that I'll be like, okay, that makes sense. That makes sense. All of a sudden you'll get to this pothole and you're like, oh, well, it doesn't make sense anymore because it doesn't adequately address that aspect of Jeffrey Epstein. Mike Benz's theory, though, that he detailed on the show last Wednesday, of all the theories, that one is the most plausible to me. Now, I say this, I'm not like staking my claim on that theory. I'm just saying, of all the theories, that one answers the most unanswered questions. And the gist of it, again, if you haven't watched that episode, go back to last Wednesday's episode and watch it. Listen to Mike Benz detail this himself. But the gist of it is Mike Benz theorizes that Jeffrey Epstein was a financier. We actually know that for a fact. And that what he did associated with governments, whether it's the US government, the French government, the UK government, the Saudi government, the Israeli government, he didn't detail exactly which governments, but what he might have done associated with various governments is serve as a liaison because he was a financier, serve as sort of a go-between for governments to do deals that are in, the political interest when the government itself doesn't want to appear involved. So, and this is just a hypothetical, if the United States wanted to do a deal with Saudi Arabia or they wanted some deal done, but neither of the governments wanted to appear that they were in the works here, then they might have a go-between that brokered that deal, not a go-between that was an official asset of the CIA or an official employee of the Saudi government, but somebody who had the connections to actually do that deal, like a financier that knew people involved. And then the reason the financier would maybe work off the books for these governments was because he might financially benefit from the deal itself. Well, that's essentially Mike Benz's theory. Benz gave 2 other examples of US intel doing this, using this off the books financier liaison go-between for business deals that also had not just political, but international implications. And of these other examples that Mike Benz proposed, Epstein fits the profile to a T. To a T. So if you haven't watched this episode, highly recommend that you go watch this and let me know what you think. If you've seen it already, drop your comment in the live chat. Tell me if you think that this theory makes the most sense, makes the least sense. If you see any holes in this theory, any places where you say, actually, this theory doesn't really explain any part of Epstein's existence or what we know, let me know, because that's actually That's actually the key to verifying a lot of this stuff is finding where it's not verifiable. Okay. Oh, just kidding. There's one more thing about Epstein that I have to say before we move on. The Wall Street Journal hit piece trying to tie Jeffrey Epstein to Donald Trump. You guys saw that, right? The Wall Street Journal over the weekend published a piece alleging that Donald Trump drew a doodle. I wish that I it's hard to even believe that they would publish this. It's literally so dumb. I feel dumber for saying it. Yeah, there it is on the screen. This is the headline. Jeffrey Epstein's friends sent him bawdy letters for a 50th birthday album. One was from Donald Trump. This is the Wall Street Journal's headline. And the gist of this article, or the summary, is that Donald Trump drew a stick figure of a girl with rather large assets, we'll say, and wrote a little fake dialogue between he and Jeffrey Epstein as the note, in which I don't know. You can see it in the article that it's just basically about liking girls. Does it sound dumb already? Oh, that's because it is so dumb. This is like the dumbest topic that we've had to talk about in a long time. So here's the take on the Wall Street Journal hit piece. One, it's either fake, which is my guess. I think this is entirely fabricated, or it doesn't matter. So let's talk about the second part. If it is real, which it's not. If it's real, it doesn't matter because there's literally nothing illegal, barely even tawdry. Like, okay, if the doodle is real and this hypothetical conversation that he wrote is real, it doesn't matter. There's no smoking gun in it. It's stupid. It's when I say the word dumb, I'm not just trying to downplay a mainstream media hit job. Like, it's actually dumb. It doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. The fact that the mainstream media is still trying to associate Jeffrey Epstein with Donald Trump is so stupid. This was, first of all, when this allegedly happened was before Donald Trump banned Epstein from Mar-a-Lago. You remember that as soon as Donald Trump heard the allegations about Jeffrey Epstein with underage girls, he kicked him out of Mar-a-Lago. Epstein had been a member there, and as soon as Trump found out about his crimes, he was booted immediately. In fact, Donald Trump, by the way, has been one of the only advocates for Epstein's victims from the get-go. There was a report that Donald Trump was going to be served a subpoena in Florida back in the day when Epstein was going to perhaps face charges back in 2007. And that before the subpoena ever arrived, Donald Trump gets on the phone with the investigator and goes, "Hey, don't even bother. I'm happy to tell you anything and everything you need to know." Trump has actually been an advocate for Epstein's victims long before anybody else was. That's the first thing. And then the second thing is if there was any incriminating evidence that the deep state had associating Donald Trump and Jeffrey Epstein, do you think for a second they wouldn't have leaked it? After everything that they've manufactured and staged, all the lies, all the smears, all the propaganda, you think that they would have just kept it until now? Ridiculous. Ridiculous. Shame on the Washington Post. They didn't even release the letter. So when I'm talking about this doodle and this hypothetical conversation that you can see on the screen right now, they didn't even print a picture of the letter. In fact, Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt said that when the White House asked to see this, when they were going to respond to it, the Wall Street Journal said, "No, you can't see it. We don't even have it anymore. You don't even have it." Shame on the Wall Street Journal, I mean. In this case, it wasn't the Washington Post. We'll save the slams on the Washington Post till a little later in the show when we talk about Russiagate. Shame on the Wall Street Journal for publishing this. So they didn't even release the letter. Word on the street is that they don't even have it. I mean, they told the White House they don't have it anymore. It's fake. It's utterly fake news. But juxtapose this. Juxtapose this. The Wall Street Journal published a story about an alleged Trump letter because they want to associate Trump and Epstein, even though they didn't publish the letter and they say they don't have it because it's fake. And yet, when the Ashley Biden diary went public, any of these mainstream media outlets had it in their hands. Hard evidence. Ashley Biden writing that Joe Biden, her father, took inappropriate showers with her as a child. They had that in their hands. And they published nothing about it. This is the mainstream media. They are not repentant. They have not changed. They are doing the dirtiest of dirty work on behalf of the people that hate you. And that, utterly despicable. And of course, it's fake news. I mean, literally, does anyone believe the Wall Street Journal post? I don't think anyone believes that article. Okay. All right. So let's move on to the Tulsi Gabbard news because this is, or it might be, big news. As I said at the beginning of the show, there's one big caveat before we celebrate this reckoning for Russiagate. And before we get to that, I want to make one point to kind of lead into this. Remember last week when there were all those mainstream media headlines about MAGA being divided, President Trump's biggest supporters turning on him over Epstein, and we all rolled our eyes and we were like, that is not what's happening. What's happening is those of us who are supporters of President Trump are acting as true friends. We're telling him the truth because a true friend tells the truth, even when the truth is uncomfortable or might have consequences. And the reason we're telling him the truth is because we want to make sure that the America First agenda that we share with President Trump, the reason we voted for him, is executed in the most effective way possible. We want to sharpen the administration by making sure that any person or any policy that's associated with the administration that's become a liability to achieving the America First agenda, we want to, cut the dead weight. We don't want anybody to be an anchor to that agenda. But the mainstream media, of course, they've propagated this lie for a long time that President Trump supporters, MAGA is a cult. They just do the president's bidding and they never challenge him. That, of course, has never been true. Never. It's never been true. The mainstream media has repeated that lie to themselves so often that they believe it. But you and I know that there's a difference between a cult following, a religious following. A religious following would be like the left. The left and their communist ideology, their followers are not allowed to diverge from that ideology because it's a religious ideology. That's what communism is. But President Trump supporters, we're big supporters of President Trump because we are a movement. A movement is a group of people who join forces because we share one or more goals, and we know that there's strength in numbers, and we need each other to achieve that goal. So if you are an objective observer versus a biased propagandist, which is what the mainstream media are, then you have always known that MAGA is a movement and that we've always been willing to tell President Trump the truth, and he appreciates that and actually listens to us. That being said, we're still talking about Pam Bondi today. Ugh, how are we still talking about Pam Bondi after all this time? By the way, Pam Bondi, if Mike Benz's theory on Jeffrey Epstein proves to be correct, which time will tell, then my theory will also be proved correct. My theory that Pam Bondi, with her lies about having the Epstein files on her desk and, repeated exaggerations about what was in those files when she had not verified them, that I said all along, she wasn't staging some kind of massive government cover-up. She's not corrupt. She's not a deep state actor. But the reality is that she got in over her head as Attorney General. She got over her skis by shooting off her mouth because she wanted attention, and then realized that, oh my word, there was way more than met the eye to the Epstein files, which is not only a severe lack of judgment, it is gross incompetence as Attorney General. So my original analysis stands. But the reason that I'm bringing up Pam Bondi again today is not because I love talking about her. It is because Pam Bondi is now facing, I would argue, an even bigger test. Pam Bondi, a bigger test than the Epstein files. Pam Bondi is facing the biggest test that she may ever face as Attorney General. And it's as a result of DNI, President Trump's Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard, and the revelations that Tulsi Gabbard released publicly over the weekend. She declassified documents related to Russiagate. So we're going to start here by reading a little bit of what Tulsi Gabbard released. This is what she posted on X. She said, Americans will finally learn the truth about how, in 2016, intelligence was politicized and weaponized by the most powerful people in the Obama administration to lay the groundwork for what was essentially a years-long coup against President Donald Trump, subverting the will of the American people and undermining our democratic republic. Here's how. She posted a graphic in which she says the creation of the Russia hoax, and it's a flow chart. It starts with the real intelligence assessment, meaning the correct or the accurate intelligence assessment from the United States government following President Trump's victory in 2016 was that, quote, Russia and criminal actors did not impact recent U.S. election results by conducting cyber attacks on infrastructure. That was the actual assessment of the intelligence community after Donald Trump wins. So he wins the election against against Hillary Clinton, who will never be president. Almost called her president. Sorry, Hill, you'll never be president. After this real intelligence intel community assessment, instead of making that public to the American people, the Obama administration, this is Obama himself, and then his spooks like DNI Clapper and CIA Director Brennan, in addition to the FBI, this is James Comey and Andrew McCabe, his deputy, they convened a secret meeting. In this meeting, they decided to lie to the American people. They decided to scuttle what was the true assessment of the intel community about Russian involvement in our election or Russian meddling in our election. And instead, they manufactured the lie that Russia tried to meddle in our election. They did meddle, and that it was Russian interference that led to Donald Trump's victory over Hillary Clinton. From this meeting, the Russiagate hoax was born, and it was disseminated to President Trump through James Comey briefing him with this new manufactured intel. After James Comey briefed the president-elect Trump, he leaked that briefing to the mainstream media. The mainstream media, of course, being the propagandists of the Obama administration, of the left. They started, you can see this on Tulsi Gabbard's graphic, they started echoing these allegations that President Trump won only due to Russian interference. The Trump is a puppet of Putin narrative. And it was never true. This was always a lie. And what Tulsi Gabbard, as Director of National Intelligence, has done is she has declassified key documents that prove this. Now, you might be sitting there thinking, Liz, we know this. This is not new information. This is something we've known for a decade. And you would be correct. That is in fact true. We have known about this for a long time, and we've even known the details about this for a long time. The thing that's different now, what Tulsi Gabbard has done is she has provided us with the substantiation from inside the government, meaning she has provided the smoking gun that shows us that this wasn't something that haphazardly happened. It wasn't a small cabal of evil actors within the FBI who staged this unbeknownst to the rest of the Obama administration. No. Tulsi Gabbard has shown us evidence now that almost every high-ranking Obama administration official was not only aware of the Russiagate hoax and the fact that it was a hoax, high-ranking Obama administration officials were intimately involved in staging this attack on President Trump, which is really an attack on you, the voter, who voted for President Trump. And so for the first time, we have access to a whole host of documents and more to come that prove that what we knew was true is true in what I would deem the worst possible way. Because listen, I don't want to believe this about my government. I don't want to believe this about the opposition. I don't want the left to be corrupt. I don't want a president of the United States like Obama, even if I didn't vote for him, to be a liar. I don't want the left. I don't want to sit here and say, oh, the left hates America. I don't want that to be true. But when the evidence is right before your very eyes, as it was all the way back in 2015, we increasingly gathered, thanks to amazing independent journalists on the right, countering the propaganda of the media who were also in bed with the Obama administration officials. We've known the truth for a long time. But now, Tulsi Gabbard has substantiated this to the point where we can actually demand justice. And what do I mean by that? Well, what did we say last week? Justice is not just exposing corruption. That's a good thing to do, expose corruption. We should do it at every opportunity. Justice is not pushing or allowing crimes that were committed to be relegated to the past and moving forward. Justice means identifying the people who committed the crimes, especially if they're government officials who committed crimes against us, using the power of the government to commit those crimes. It means indicting the people that committed the crimes, arresting the people who committed the crimes, and putting them on trial. And so, well, I think you and I both sit here and we're pretty excited about the revelations from Tulsi Gabbard. My reaction when I saw this was, oh, heck yes. At the same time, there's one big caveat. And that caveat is if the phrase that Tulsi Gabbard used, treasonous conspiracy, if what the Obama administration and his officials in the intel community, if what they did was in fact treasonous conspiracy, and I would argue that it is, to weaponize the intel community against a duly elected president, to invent demonstrably false allegations about Trump-Russia collusion, to then maliciously lie using those false allegations, maliciously lie to the president-elect, no less, in order to leak that lie to the mainstream media so that the public believes the lie, and then use that lie to subvert the will of the voters, then arrest the people who committed the crime, arrest the traitors. Pointing out corruption is not justice. It might be the beginning of justice, but it is not justice. We've known about this conspiracy for 10 years. Justice means arresting, indicting, and putting on trial the criminals. Barack Obama, James Comey, Clapper, Brennan. There's a whole list of names here who committed the crimes. A whole list of names. In fact, I want to show on the screen a graphic. You want to know the names here of the people involved and exactly how this unfolds? Look at this graphic. This is a graphic that was put together by a journalist named Jeff Carlson. At the time, he worked for Epic Times. This is how intricate, how complex this conspiracy is. You will watch the mainstream media in the days to come as more and more of this evidence is released and declassified by Tulsi Gabbard. You will watch an evolution happen in the mainstream media where they will stop outright denying that these bad actors committed crimes. And you will start seeing them instead pretend like, oh, it was just a very small group of people who, unbeknownst to everyone else, were doing things that were probably not the best, although, you know, their hearts were in the right place. You will see an evolution in the mainstream media narrative on this as they try to shrink it and belittle it. They will try to convince you that it's not a conspiracy. It's just a couple of bad apples. A couple bad apples. And, well, you know, once you get rid of those bad apples, they've been fired probably. They're not even in office anymore. Why are you harping on this? But this, you can call it a graphic. I mean, this is hundreds of hours of dedicated journalism, true journalism from Jeff Carlson. And the author, by the way, Jeff Carlson, he's going to be on the show tomorrow to detail exactly which Obama administration officials committed which crimes. Because I will tell you, what I do not want to see is, you know, silly perjury charges. Oh, James Comey lied to Congress. Okay, yes, he did. But that is not the primary crime that he committed. That is the crime he committed to cover up the major crime he committed. So I don't want to see silly perjury charges against Obama and the rest of his spooks for the high crimes they committed against Trump. I mean, remember who we are up against here. We are up against a deep state who charged our people with terrorism enhancement because they walked into an open door at the Capitol on January 6th and went into Speaker Pelosi's office. Terrorism enhancements. So I don't want to see any. I don't want to see any silly perjury charges against the group of individuals on this screen. And this is the reason that I brought up the mainstream media lie about, oh, MAGA is divided. President Trump's supporters are splitting apart over the Epstein files. No. Again, that was always a misunderstanding by the mainstream media based on believing their own lie. I'll tell you exactly how you know that was a lie. Because MAGA is unified on this point. That what Tulsi Gabbard did, unveiling this conspiracy and providing us with the substantiation, the declassified documents, that is wonderful. I am so grateful to Tulsi Gabbard. It took her, less than 150 days to put this together and get this to us? That's great. It makes you wonder, actually, what was John Durham? What was he doing all that time? How come he had years and he never got this kind of information to us? But President Trump's supporters, his base, they're unified on what justice means. We know what justice means. Justice is not just a Twitter thread that goes viral, some hits on Fox News, and a congressional hearing. Justice is perp walks and jumpsuits. Again, Obama, James Comey, James Clapper, John Brennan, Susan Rice, John Kerry, Loretta Lynch, Andrew McCabe, and the list goes on and on. We're talking charges of treason here, seditious conspiracy to defraud the government, deprivation of rights under the color of law, grand conspiracy. Those are the charges that fit the crimes. Again, you want to look at exactly how this was carried out. This infographic is an in-depth explainer on exactly who must be charged with what crime in the whole scheme of the malicious Russiagate conspiracy against President Trump. Those are the names. Arrest them. Arrest them. But will they? Again, this is Attorney General Pam Bondi's big moment. This is her big test. What are we going to see? Are we going to see perjury charges, or are we going to see justice? Now, there are those that argue that treason is an extremely high bar to meet, that we're not going to see charges of treason here because treason or even seditious conspiracy, there's an element to both of those, or there's often an element to both of those charges that needs to be present in order for a conviction to be possible. And there needs to be violence or use of force. That's often, it's not just an element that needs to be present, it's often the central element for both of those charges. But it's not a binary choice. Treason and seditious conspiracy, it's not that or perjury. There's conspiracy to defraud the government, deprivation of rights under the color of law, grand conspiracy. Now, I'm of the school of analysis. I don't even think that Attorney General Pam Bondi should shy away from treason and seditious conspiracy. I think she should make the case. But if for some reason she thinks she can't, don't just go for perjury as the alternative. Here's the thing. You could, if you charge some of these individuals with grand conspiracy, then you can charge them. You're not limited by a statute of limitations, and you can charge them outside of the courts in Washington, D.C. So all that being said, one of the things that I see people asking, and I think that this is a good and prudent question. It's something that we need to be able to articulate. It's important for us as the base to be able to very succinctly and concretely ask for the things that we want from the Trump administration, which means that we need to essentially have an elevator pitch of what we want. And so there are a few things that you and I, as the base, need to know about Russiagate in order to be able to demand not just, as I said, not just a viral Twitter post and Fox News appearances, a congressional hearing, and a lame perjury charge. If we want justice, here's what we need to know about Russiagate. Going back to July 26th of 2016, this is several months prior to the presidential election, in the thick of Donald Trump versus Hillary Clinton. Hillary Clinton, in combination with the DNC, so Hillary Clinton and the DNC together, the Democratic Party, paid to have Christopher Steele write the fake Christopher Steele dossier. You're familiar with a Christopher Steele dossier. In this dossier, unverifiable, not just unverified, unverifiable, because they're not true, allegations against President Trump, accusing him of not only being a puppet of Putin, but accusing him of, you remember the infamous P-tape allegation? Never true, but a salacious, what sells the best? A salacious sex scandal. So Christopher Steele included a fake salacious sex scandal accusing Donald Trump of doing something with Russian prostitutes, and Putin having that as blackmail against him, and that's why President Trump was acting as a puppet of Putin. Hillary Clinton and the DNC paid Christopher Steele, who's a former British spy, to create this fake dossier. It was deliberately done. They knew that Hillary Clinton knew that she was inventing these allegations, and she was doing it to try to hamstring President Trump in the eyes of voters. She was trying to tell a lie about President Trump so that she would win the election. Well, as soon as she put this plan into action, the CIA, the Obama CIA discovered what Hillary Clinton was doing, this plot that she had concocted against Donald Trump. And the CIA told Barack Obama what Hillary Clinton was doing. In fact, on July 28th, this is 2 days after Hillary Clinton launched this plot. On July 28th, and then subsequently a few days later, on August 3rd of 2016, then CIA Director John Brennan, Obama's CIA director, briefed Obama and Biden, who was the vice president, and the DNI for Obama, who's James Clapper, and FBI Director James Comey about Hillary Clinton's plot to falsely accuse Donald Trump of Russia collusion. Now, it's very important to note right from the beginning that the FBI knew that the allegations in the Steele dossier weren't true. The FBI knew that the allegations were false, and they knew so surely that they actually fired Christopher Steele, who they had used as a source for other things, because they said, well, he's lying, which means he's unreliable, which means we can't use him for other things. The FBI knew that this wasn't true. And yet, knowing that the Steele dossier was false, FBI Director James Comey nonetheless launched Crossfire Hurricane, which was, of course, investigating President Trump for Russia collusion. In addition, the FBI filed FISA court warrants. This is a warrant to spy on an American citizen. Filed FISA court warrants against Carter Page, who was in President Trump's orbit at the time. And they used the Christopher Steele dossier, which they knew was fake, as justification for why the FISA court should allow them to spy on Carter Page. And the FISA court rubber stamped those orders, and Carter Page was subject to wiretapping, to being spied on by the Obama administration at the time. Now, you'll remember, because we've covered this extensively on the Liz Wheeler show, there was an FBI lawyer at the time who also lied, in addition to just using the fake Steele dossier as justification for obtaining that warrant to spy on Carter Page. An FBI lawyer also falsified evidence. He deliberately altered the text of an email in order to make Carter Page appear to be guilty, when the true text of the email, when it was unaltered, it was exculpatory. It demonstrated that Carter Page was, in fact, not guilty. That FBI lawyer was charged with that crime of falsifying evidence. He didn't serve a day in prison. He was given a slap on the wrist by the judge in his sentencing, a judge by the name of Boasberg. You might recognize that name. Boasberg. Now, fast forward just a little bit, and President Trump wins the election in 2016. Kevin Kleinsmith, by the way, some of you are pointing out or asking what the name of that lawyer is. His name is Kevin Kleinsmith. So President Trump wins the election in 2016, and immediately after the election, the intelligence community, this is still under President Obama, Donald Trump is just the president-elect until his inauguration in January of 2017. In December of 2016, after Donald Trump defeated Hillary Clinton, the intelligence community assesses the election, and their assessment of the election was that there was no Russian interference. This is a draft of a December 8th, 2016 President Daily Briefing that was going to be briefed to Barack Obama and to President-elect Donald Trump. And this was what was written in that draft of the President's Daily Briefing. Quote, Russian and criminal actors did not impact recent U.S. election results by conducting malicious cyber activities against election infrastructure, end quote. Definitively, the intel community assessed and concluded Russia did not impact the outcome of the 2016 election. However, this December 8th, 2016 draft of the President's Daily Briefing was never actually used. It was scuttled. It was canceled. It was pulled. And instead, on December 9th, the day after, President Obama convened a secret meeting at the White House with top National Security Council principals. We're talking James Clapper, John Brennan, again, DNI and CIA director, Susan Rice, his national security advisor, John Kerry, Loretta Lynch, who was his attorney general, Andrew McCabe, deputy FBI director, and many others, in order to discuss that assessment, to discuss the intelligence community concluding that Russia did not, in fact, impact the outcome of the 2016 election. They decided amongst themselves that they were going to reject that analysis. And instead, this group, Obama and his spooks, manufactured a new intelligence community assessment. They manufactured a new narrative. They invented their new talking points. They made up a lie that Russia did, in fact, impact the outcome of the election. And they used as substantiation for that lie the Steele dossier, which they all knew to be false. So fast forward 1 month later, January 6th, 2017, James Comey, FBI director at the time under President Obama, went to Trump Tower, visited President-elect Donald Trump with the new intelligence community assessment that accused Trump of colluding with Russia and of Russia of interfering in the 2016 election results. Not only was that a lie, James Comey deliberately included in that assessment to Trump the allegations that were inside the Christopher Steele dossier about, the P tape and the Russian prostitutes. Why would he do that, even though he knew it was false? Well, the reason he did that was because he leaked the fact that he briefed Trump on these things to the mainstream media, and he wanted to be able to leak to the mainstream media the details, the salacious sex scandal details, even though he knew they were false. Then you had DNI Clapper leaking the actual Steele dossier itself to CNN. Now, of course, James Comey was ultimately fired, but on his way out the door, after President Trump fired him, what happened? He leaked documents, his own internal memos. He leaked via a friend, of course, to keep his hands clean, to the mainstream media. And it was those leaked Comey memos that led to Robert Mueller being appointed as special counsel. Robert Mueller, you'll remember, had always been a close friend and a mentor of James Comey. Now, of course, Mueller, after years and years and tens of millions of your taxpayer dollars, concluded ultimately that there was no Russian collusion. Thank God. The truth prevailed, but not before the Trump administration had been hamstrung by these false allegations, this weaponization of the government against a duly elected president at the hands of Obama and his administration officials. So again, fast forward to the end of President Trump's first term, President Trump appoints Rick Grinnell and Kash Patel as acting DNI and deputy DNI to investigate the Russiagate conspiracy that Obama and his people had propagated. Rick Grinnell and Kash Patel declassified documents on President Trump's last day in office related to this, it was evidence that Obama and his people had conducted this conspiracy. And so all of a sudden, the actions of the Biden administration start to make sense. The raid on Mar-a-Lago, searching Melania Trump's closet and Barron Trump's bedroom, documents laid out on the floor in President Trump's, Oval Office at his private residence. What was this all about? It certainly couldn't have been about a president having classified information at his Secret Service secured private residence after he's president, because he has the right to do that. Barack Obama even has classified documents in a warehouse in Chicago. Well, it's not just a matter of a double standard here. The reason that the FBI raided Mar-a-Lago was because they're searching for the Russiagate documents that Rick Grinnell and Kash Patel had uncovered when they were DNI and deputy DNI that demonstrated exactly what we're seeing, thanks to Tulsi Gabbard finally declassifying these documents and giving them to us. And so that brings us back to the charges that we must demand from the Department of Justice. We don't want to see perjury charges. We don't want to see James Comey being charged with perjury because he lied to Congress about what he knew. I don't recall. He always says. I don't remember, he always says. BS. I couldn't really tell you. This guy is the worst memory of anyone that I've ever seen in government. Especially someone who's touched all of these different secrets, all of these different conspiracies. He has his hand in everything and just doesn't remember. He is a liar. And he should be held accountable. But not just for the lying, for the crimes that he committed. And so that brings us back to grand conspiracy. If you look, and we're going to talk to Jeff Carlson about this on the show tomorrow, highly recommend you subscribe to youtube.com/Liz Wheeler and set that notification bell so that you get notified when we go live. We're going to go live at 1 p.m. Eastern, or right close to 1 p.m. Eastern. And we're going to go through this tangled web, because my question here, when you look at this conspiracy, this is not a small cabal of bad apples within the FBI who did something bad to get rid of Mike Flynn. This is a really intricate, far reaching conspiracy that required almost every high ranking Obama administration official to play a very specific role in making this happen. And so, my question is, who was the mastermind of this conspiracy? Who put together this plot and detailed exactly what role Clapper needed to play, and Brennan needed to play, and Andrew McCabe needed to play, and Comey needed to play, and Loretta Lynch needed to play, and Susan Rice needed to play, and the whole list? Who put this together? Because that's the person who needs to face the highest charges. Again, tomorrow, 1 p.m. Eastern, we're going to have Jeff Carlson on the show to answer that question, to untangle this, because I'm really grateful for Tulsi Gabbard, DNI Gabbard, declassifying these documents. This is what we voted for. Or it's the beginning of what we voted for. Because actual justice is not just exposing corruption. Actual justice, true justice, is accountability. It's identifying the people who committed the crimes, indicting them, arresting them, and putting them on trial for using our government against us. And that warrants a whole heck of a lot more than a perjury charge. James Comey lied to Congress. Yeah, he did. To cover up what? That's the charges we want to see. All right, before we go today, I know everyone and their brother is weighed in on the Coldplay scandal. Yeah, that scandal. Coldplay concert caught on Kiss Cam. The CEO of Astronomer was caught with his arms around what does she call herself? The chief people officer, the HR girl for Astronomer. And when they were caught on Kiss Cam, it suddenly became clear that yes, they're married, but not to each other. This is what they did. Take a look.
Yeah. Oh, look at these two. All right, come on. You're okay? Oh, what? Either they're having an affair or they're just very shy. I'm not quite sure.
It's actually funny that Coldplay's Chris Martin understood exactly what happened the second he saw it. He's like, oh, either they're having an affair or they're extremely shy. Yeah, they're having an affair. Andy Byron is married to another woman. Kristen Cabot is married to another man, and they were locked in a loving embrace at the at this concert. And listen, the memes are hilarious and actually quite funny. You've probably seen them. It's gone viral for days. But I got to tell you what my first reaction to this was. My first reaction to this was, wow, human nature is universal and unchanging. It actually reminded me of Genesis. When Adam and Eve committed a sin, the first sin, what did they do? When they disobeyed God, when they violated God's direction to them, don't eat from the tree of good and evil. What did they do after they committed the sin and they disobeyed God? They hid themselves. It is human nature, all the way back to the first man and woman, to hide oneself when caught in sin. It's kind of chilling to think about. There are some people who say that we shouldn't be as harsh on Andy Byron and Kristen Cabot. That's the name of the now former Astronomer CEO. He resigned in the wake of this scandal. Some people are saying, listen, don't ruin their lives. They've already ruined their families and their marriages. Don't ruin their lives and make them a meme. And I have to say, I totally disagree with that. Social stigma on sin is an excellent way to enforce a moral society without laws doing that. Social pressure on, or social stigma on sin, is actually how you encourage people to behave properly. Imagine now the next time some CEO is thinking about stepping out on his wife and cavorting at a concert with his mistress. Well, he might think twice about this because he's like, oh, well, I don't want that to happen to me. What happened to Andy Byron? Yeah, this is a good thing. Being being ashamed of what you're doing, or fearing shame if you're caught in sin, that's actually a good thing. We have this idea in our culture that shame is a toxic thing. And I'm sure there are examples of toxic shame, of people feeling shame for things that they shouldn't be ashamed of, but you should actually feel ashamed for things that you do when you are doing bad things. And a society that recognizes that and places social stigma on sin when that sin is being committed, that will be a better society. That society will be better for it. The one weird thing I have to say, the one weird thing about this is the standards of our society, though. The standards of our society, we need to readjust them a bit. Let's just say that. Because when I watched this, I saw when Andy Byron tendered his resignation to the board of the astronomer and they accepted it and said, the standard of behavior is inappropriate. And I thought, okay, yeah, I don't disagree. He should resign from his position because he was caught doing something bad and immoral. And it's good when a society actually has social punishments for immorality. But I could not help but notice uh, the fact that when journalist Glenn Greenwald, when he had a gay porn tape, sex tape leaked, engaging in disgusting humiliation, fetish, homosexual acts with a prostitute, he filmed it or somebody filmed it and it was leaked online. Our society defended him. They defended the gay porn and socially stigmatized regular old adultery. And I am by no means, by the way, downplaying the immorality or even the tragedy of good old fashioned adultery. These two individuals have broken their families. It actually, that's the one argument when people are saying, "Oh, this mocking and this memeing of this couple, we shouldn't do that. That's not nice." The one argument or the one argument on this on that draws me to, "Oh, maybe we shouldn't be so harsh on them," is because their families are broken. This is going to have reverberating pain and brokenness for literally generations. But why do we apply the social stigma to Andy Byron and Kristen Cabot, but not to deviant sexual behavior? Why is deviant sexual behavior not only allowed, but encouraged and celebrated and defended, even by people who call themselves Christians and conservatives who say that they stand for family values? Why is Glenn Greenwald defended and Andy Byron ostracized? Again, I'm not saying Andy Byron shouldn't be subject to social stigma. I'm not saying he should not lose his job. I think he should be subject to social stigma and he should lose his job. But don't you think we should apply that standard equally, especially when the actions are not just immoral, they are deviant and disordered? Our society sometimes seems to be inching closer to truth, to what's good and true and beautiful. And then other times I'm like, guys, do you not see the forest for the trees? All right. We are living in a time, you and I, as you know, when truth is treated like hate, lies are paraded as compassion. I think Elon Musk calls it suicidal empathy. The media calls it tolerance. You and I know better because we pursue the truth. At Blaze TV, we do not play along with the mainstream media. We tell the truth even when it's hard, even when it's unpopular, because truth is too important to stay silent. On my show and across the Blaze TV network, we go deeper than the headlines. We don't just react to the news. We explain what's really driving it. And sometimes you and I drive the news itself. You won't hear this from the corporate media. They're too busy pushing their own agenda. But we are here to push back with clarity and conviction to pursue the truth. It's not just content. What we do here, you and I, it's a calling. And when you subscribe to Blaze TV, you are not just supporting conservative voices, you are joining the movement that refuses to bow to the cultural chaos. It's just $8 a month when you use promo code Liz. Join us, please. That's $20 off the annual plan. It's only 26 cents a day to support the voices that won't back down, to be part of our movement. Go to blazetv.com/Liz. Join us today. The truth matters. And they're doing everything they can to silence it. Don't let them. blazetv.com/Liz, promo code Liz. All right. On the live chat, you guys are blowing up the live chat today. It seems that there is a consensus among MAGA, as I said earlier, that we want justice. We're all pretty grateful and pretty excited about the news from Tulsi Gabbard, but we demand perp walks and jumpsuits. Listen, I don't want to pat myself on the back, so I think we can all pat ourselves on the back here, though, because we have been ahead of the curve calling for perp walks and jumpsuits. We've known that this was coming. This exposure of corruption, that part we can expect. But can we expect actual justice? That's the question. The answer is TBD and is dependent on whether we raise our voices loud enough in our demands. So get ready. This fight for justice is just beginning. Don't forget to tune into the show tomorrow at 1 o'clock. We're going to talk to Jeff Carlson about exactly who in the Obama sphere should be charged with what crime. That's 1 p.m. Eastern. Set your alarm, set your notifications on youtube.com/Liz Wheeler, on x.com/Liz_Wheeler. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. Thank you for being here today for this live stream. I'm Liz Wheeler. This is The Liz Wheeler Show.